The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Well, another Ontario election is in the books, and Doug Ford's PCs cruise to another majority, in fact, a larger majority this time than in 2018 here in Durham Region. The majority of the ridings, once again, are blue, with one exception, as seems to be the rule for the last 3 elections, actually now. Oshawa remained NDP orange. Joining us today on Talk Politics, we are taping this the morning after the election, is MPP-elect for Oshawa, Jennifer French. Jennifer, welcome to the show, and congratulations on a very hard-fought win in your riding.
Thank you very much, Deb, and I'm glad to be joining you this morning.
So, how are you feeling? I mean, was it quite it was quite the seesaw back and forth, and very close all night long between yourself and the Conservative candidate, Alex Down. What kind of emotions were you going through last night?
Oh, I wasn't going through too many emotions. It was just you were in a holding pattern of wait and see, quite nerve-wracking, and nerve-wracking, of course, for yes, the campaign team and supporters, but a lot of people across the province were keeping an eye on Oshawa as they do. We're a bit of an interesting space, as you said, an orange dot, really in a sea of blue. We used to be an orange dot in a sea of red, but we have we have an interesting history here, and clearly an interesting future. And I'm very glad to be a part of it. It was nerve-wracking, though, but we are glad that we had such great conversations at the door, and continued, just staying the course to hear from folks and reach as many people as we could. And I'm pleased to be able to go back to Queen's Park on behalf of the folks in our community.
Did you expect it to be that close?
Well, no, but we knew all along that it was the same battle it always has been, right, between NDP and Conservative. And it's interesting because, of course, provincially, that has been the story. This is the land of Ed Broadbent, and yet, it's been Conservative or NDP through its history. Looking across the whole province, though, and seeing the Liberal vote, seeing the Liberals are going back still without official party status, as they had been the past 4 years. That's an interesting consideration for others. But in Oshawa, we've always had this blue and orange. But there's a lot of folks in Oshawa with strong, political convictions. But one thing I'll say is, regardless of stripe, we do have a tightly knit community that people do want what's best for their neighbor. They may have different views on what that looks like, but it was a lot of community politics at the doors. And I'm sure my opponent, or I'm sure Alex heard that same thing. We had a good chat last night after the results came in, and we both heard a lot at the doors about the needs in our community and the hopes for our community. So,
what was it about your campaign that put you over the top, that put you in the win column?
Well, I only know the parts that I felt and that I saw, and I think spending a lot of time in different pockets in Oshawa, you see different realities, different needs. So, in some of the community, to be able to talk about the need for dental care, mental health coverage, those are big head nodders, because people recognize, the cost of those services being prohibitive for themselves and their families, but also just the unbelievable need for strong investments in healthcare, education, in services. So those were important conversations to have. But across the whole community, that was something people were saying and acknowledging was needed, as well as affordability measures. But all of this under that umbrella of people need safe and affordable housing, whether that is rent that people can find and then can pay, or aiming for that first home in the community that they love. So there are a lot of pieces that aren't fitting across the province. So it I was very proud to have the platform that we ran on. The fully costed but very hopeful platform of the NDP was an easy sell for folks because so much of it is so personal and about investing in services, right? So that was a piece of it. But a lot of relationships. I had a lot of folks saying, "Oh, I have your office on speed dial," in some of the neighborhoods that have a bit more visible and measurable need, right? Like we've been doing a lot of community outreach stuff that doesn't make the papers, just community service. We're one of the busiest community offices across the province. That will not slow down, as we will undoubtedly continue to see some of those programs just pulled away like they have been, and more cuts and a bit of undermining. And not a bit, I worry, actually. I'm actually quite nervous about that. But getting positive feedback at the doors about the just steady work that we've been doing in the community, and that acknowledgement was heartening. But I've been able to take voices from the community through the years to Queen's Park. I've kind of been a yappy little thing in taking other people's stories, and I will continue to do that and continue to fight as needed, or to maybe inspire this government as needed with real stories from our neighbors.
I want to ask you about voter turnout. Voter turnout in Oshawa was only 39%, which is about where it was province-wide. We're hearing this morning the lowest voter turnout in Ontario history. How disappointing is that for you and for all candidates?
Yeah, it's disappointing. It speaks to that broader conversation we should be having around electoral politics and what that looks like, and other people have been breaking down the math, area to area, but if it's 22% Ontarians voted for this current government, and if it's whatever the numbers are, don't quote me on that one, but it's sort of that idea of a lot of people stayed home, or a lot of people, I don't know, shrugged and said there's no point. I'm not sure. Obviously I'm biased. I know there's a point. Not just every vote matters, but every story matters, or should, right? So if people feel that they're up against a machine and they're powerless to kind of stop it, we've got to really take a hard look. I don't know if this is going to be the government that will, commit to electoral reform, but we do need to have those conversations around how do we engage, who are we missing, who are we not making space for, and try and do that. Again, the community politics provincial is community politics, right? People think municipal, but provincial really is as well. So we have a lot of work to do on that front. I have that work to do locally, but I think we as a province need to engage with our neighbors and invite them and inspire them in different ways to connect with government. I'm actually surprised to see it as low, because what I really recognized is that with long-term care and health care, yes, with the COVID pieces, but just people started to see that government decisions actually impact their daily lives, right? And what that looks like for their children in school and their loved ones in care. ODSP, all of the folks who rely on government decisions and policies. I thought there were more people who recognized just how interlinked we are with government policy, right? And so we have some work to do. Yeah,
I mean, that also leads me to points that I've heard this morning. Are people's memories short? Because there was you're right, the outrage over the long-term care and what our seniors and our loved ones were going through, and the untimely deaths throughout COVID. Or is it just people are just totally exhausted? Or is it even apathy? Because that's even tougher to deal with.
I don't have that answer. It may be a mix. It may be, people who are disenchanted with the system and disenfranchised themselves, whether they've been, suppressed in some way, kept out of it, not included, not inspired, all of this. And probably more that is far more thoughtful than what I just, and off the top of my head. I was engaging with people at the doors, and they were engaging back, so I was in a bit of a bubble. You're in a bubble in a campaign, right? You are face to face with people, and you're living the engagement. And we've been we've been living the engagement in between elections as well through our community office and whatnot, but still there are a lot of folks we've got to be connecting with.
The question was asked today of Premier-elect Ford, and I'll ask this of you too. The question was asked with the lowest voter turnout in Ontario history, and you mentioned, what was it, only 22% of the voters actually voted for the Conservatives. Does that really give his government a mandate? What are your thoughts?
Well, I didn't hear their messaging at the door, right? Like, I didn't hear people wanting Highway 413. I didn't hear people wanting, to run over the green belt or to run roughshod over, tenants' rights. I didn't hear that. I heard the opposite of that, right? So, yes, I'm in Oshawa, but also across the province, I'm sure that his now, soon to be government benches or elected government benches heard things at the door that were real, right? And maybe hurt or fears or, all of that, but they would have heard it at the doors. And I'm hoping that they take that with them as well. I've sat across now from only majority governments, and they do come in with that sense of, see, we were right all along, and you guys were wrong all along. And you think, well, a lot of folks are nervous. A lot of folks are unhappy. A lot of folks are now very fearful. There's anxiety about what those cuts will look like and how it will impact ourselves and our loved ones. So I do hope that they factor that in and don't just, run roughshod with that, their concept of a clear mandate. We're going to hear that a lot. That'll be a lot of the language. I have every faith. But at the same time, I hope they are more thoughtful than what we kind of saw last time in terms of representing the people that didn't vote for them, because a lot of folks didn't. But still, we have to look after, everyone's interests and not just exclude them. So I won't say I'm hopeful for that, but I do hope for it.
Okay, we are in conversation with Oshawa MPP-elect Jennifer French on this edition of Talk Politics. We're going to go to a quick break. More of our conversation with Jennifer French after this. Don't go away.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
My husband is a wonderful man and a great father when he's not drinking. I'm so angry he chooses alcohol over us. If he really loved us, he'd stop drinking, right? My counselor suggested I try Al-Anon. I didn't understand why. I'm not the one with the problem, but I'm glad I went. Do you worry about someone's drinking? You are not alone. Al-Anon or Alateen can help. Call 866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
Hey, I'm Chef Corey Dern, host of a show on Rogers TV Georgina called Cooking with Corey. Join me bi-weekly for brand new episodes where I teach you not only what to cook, but how to cook. On this show, we have cooked almost everything. Things like Japanese udon noodles with tofu, chicken on the rocks, zucchini fritters, and even grilled cheese. There's only one thing missing, and that's smell-o-vision. That's Cooking with Corey, right here on Rogers TV Georgina.
I'm Eric Marchinosa's Cinema Scene in Review. Join me for a monthly movie roundup of new releases either in theaters or available to stream. See you next time in Review.
Hi, I'm Constable Darrell Rice, Durham Regional Police Service. Tune into Rogers Cable 10 to watch me on Seniors Talk with DRPS, where we'll talk about all kinds of amazing information and community programs for you, our seniors in Durham Region.
Welcome back to Talk Politics. I'm Debra Hutchison. Our guest this week is Oshawa MPP-elect Jennifer French, who is now about to start her third term in office. Did you think, Jen, 3 years ago, or 3 elections ago when you were first elected, that you would be on your 3rd term?
Well, when I remember back to 2014, I guess we were all a little younger and fresher. And I had a vision of what I thought I was getting into, and I had no idea, but I do now, and I'm recommitted. It has been a heck of a journey, and to imagine that it'll be another, 4 years opposite a majority, it's a long time. It's a very special opportunity. I'm glad to have it. Did I think, 8 years ago? I don't know. It's one day at a time in this role, right? And you've got your big picture of how you want to help shape things, but a lot of surprises in politics.
What have been some of the biggest surprises for you?
How much I use my teacher skill set in the legislature in terms of...
You mean your teacher's voice?
Well, okay, my teacher's voice when I have the opportunity to preside over the legislature, or have had, on Thursdays as speaker. Yeah, that's not just a shot at, the comment about managing behaviors, although I won't not say that. But really just, as a teacher, you're ready for everything. You've got your long range plans, your short term, and then, the day can change. And especially with this last government, with just the onslaught of bills and maneuvering, and you're constantly shifting and changing and being ready for things. So I think that was a surprise, was just how much you use your, you draw from your life skills, right, in that space. It is pretty special when you look around that legislature, especially on our last benches, and I think looking forward at our new opposition bench, the skill sets around us. We politicians come from all backgrounds and skill sets, and I think that's what makes us stronger in that space, is that we do represent a lot of different folks across the province. It's not just the one size fits all, right? Because it doesn't. So that was a pleasant surprise when I got there, to see the range of folks and ideas and backgrounds and strengths. So I am looking forward to that heading back. We've got some new folks that I'm excited about. I'm sorry that we did lose the people that we have lost, but it is a new session with new challenges and new opportunities.
Now, we'll move on in a second, but I just wanted to stay with your thought. You said when you were first elected in 2014, you thought you knew what you were getting into, but you didn't. In what way?
Well, I think, and I'll say naively, I wanted to be in the room where decisions were made. I was coming from public education and teaching in a school in a community where I didn't think that my students had that clear path forward, or were going to have an equitable chance, at that clear path. And so I put up my hand and they picked me, and I wanted to be in the room where decisions are made. But the room where decisions are made, I think I don't know. I still haven't been in that one. That's the Premier's office, or the room behind the Premier's office, or I don't know what goes on behind those curtains. But it has been very special and important to be in the legislative chamber, where we bring the ideas, where we discuss the ideas, where we share the true stories about communities and real people who they're too busy living their lives and looking after themselves and their family and their community to run for election and be there. So, to ensure that their voices are in there. So that was something that was a surprise, is that, we do a lot of not just talking in that space, shaping ideas, but when you have a big, massive majority government, sometimes they don't listen. So that's been a frustration, and I think will likely continue, but we'll do our best.
Okay, I want to get your thoughts on your party's performance. The NDP is still the official opposition, but the party did lose some seats this time around, and you are losing Andrea Horvath. She is stepping down. Just your reaction to Andrea's decision.
Yeah, and Andrea will be an MPP, right? She's stepping down as party leader, but she'll be in the trenches there with us. And we did lose some phenomenal folks, and I'm very sorry to see them go, and I thank them for their service, and I'll miss them. They're great humans, and their communities will likely miss them as well. And we've got some new people that I'm looking forward to working with and meeting. It was was a really great platform. It was a really hopeful message that we were discussing at the doors, you know, and I had said that earlier, like I still encourage people to go and read it because it really does talk about what we know to be those family priorities, the worker priorities across the province. So, you know, it was a good campaign. It was a hopeful campaign. It was, you know, yes, well-resourced, but we certainly saw it locally, but we did see it across the province. Lots of new first-time volunteers and donors, and there was a momentum. The Conservatives had one heck of a momentum there too, right? So there were pieces there that, you know, we'll learn from, we'll unpack. I mean, it's the morning after the night before, and I look forward to doing that work with our caucus and our party. But I don't have criticisms of our platform and the messages that we were sharing and the promises that we were making. And I will stay the course in terms of, you know, calling for investment in healthcare and to stop the privatization of, you know, our education, healthcare. Like, I had a Conservative tell our canvassers at the door that he was voting NDP for the first time because he said he's always been Conservative, but that healthcare is Canadian. It's one of the most, you know, it's one of the things that makes us Canadian. And to see it be privatized and sort of pulled apart, he said, you know, should offend all of us. So he was giving me his vote in this past election. That will be something I think that the Conservatives will also have to hear from their own base and their supporters, is how do we move forward to make sure that we don't leave people behind and we build a stronger province, right? So do we have, we've got some healing to do maybe, and what we do next is important in terms of choosing an interim leader. You know, we'll have a leadership race on the horizon, but we did see, you know, the progressives in the province. They turned their back on the Liberals, which we saw that they don't have party status again. That's 8 years not being a recognized party in the legislature. So we have some conversations to have with folks around how we all move forward. So
at this point, you know, the names are starting to be thrown out there and mentioned as to who will succeed Andrea Horvath. I've heard Merit Stiles, and this morning I heard your name. Do you want the job?
Oh my goodness. What I'd like is a good night's sleep. What I'd like is to take inventory of what we heard at the doors and figure out how best to represent the people of Oshawa. I mean, that's the job that I ran for. That's the job I'm very, very proud and humbled to have. So yeah, I'm pushing off any of those things. I mean, we've got some conversations to have as a caucus. I have every faith, though, that we'll move forward in a positive direction for folks. But like, it's like I said, it's the next morning. Like I have to clean my campaign office, pick up my signs, have a good night's sleep, maybe do some gardening, and also plan for the next 4 years in terms of representing Oshawa.
Well, let's talk about that to-do list for the next 4 years. What is tops on your list?
I would say that, and I've said it a couple times, so I won't, you know, belabor the point, but investing in services and figuring out how we work with this government and kind of convince them to, you know, recommit to strengthening healthcare and what that looks like. You know, I don't think we strengthen by cuts and privatization. So healthcare and education. Talk to a lot of folks who are left behind. They're just left out of the conversation, whether that's, you know, folks on disability or Ontario Works. You know, accessibility challenges are not being met in the province. So just, you know, real folks trying to do their best in a province that where they can't move forward. So those who are not just left behind, but just a fairer well, government, but society. And that's where I come from, right? That's where I live. But speaking of where I live, folks don't have safe, predictable, affordable housing. And I think that that's going to be a big challenge for every MPP, regardless of stripe in that room, heard the need for housing at the doors. So, and that's people who had doors, right? We have unhoused in our community. And if we don't have that kind of mixed housing opportunity, supportive housing for those that need it. We don't have beds for addiction support, mental health. We do need all of these pieces to fit. So yes, single family dwellings, but also 3-bedroom apartments, and using all of the levers in government, all of those pieces to be thoughtful about how we ensure that people have housing. That's a big, big piece that isn't fitting, and it is really devastating for a lot of people. So that's something that people talk about among themselves at their workplaces and their families and their communities. So that's a big part of it. And long-term care, I cannot turn my back on long-term care accountability or to the families that I have been privileged to get to know and work alongside. So those, I'd say that's been pretty consistent. So that'll be a lot of what it is moving forward. And then as issues come up on individual bases, then we'll see what we put together for private members' bills and those focused initiatives.
Okay, we've only got less than 2 minutes left now, about a minute and a half. I want to ask you about the city of Oshawa recently opening Ed Broadbent Park. You were there. We have pictures of you with the man himself. For those that perhaps don't know a lot about Ed Broadbent, tell us why he's so important, not only to the NDP party, but to the city of Oshawa as well.
Well, to the city of Oshawa, to the province of Ontario, Ed Broadbent, this is the land of Ed Broadbent in terms of his legacy, but he does cross party lines, which is interesting considering he had been, obviously partisan and a former leader of the NDP, but people really respected him and what he stood for and his work on human rights and fairness and solid support of community and workers. So to have this Ed Broadbent waterfront park is really special. And the planning, kudos to the city. If you've seen the plans with the, human rights gardens, an amphitheater, outdoor seating, areas for reflection or debate, community discussion, I think we're all going to be really appreciative of that space in our city. But yes, Ed Broadbent, I mean, he's a legend, but he's still doing the work, right? And connecting with people. And he called me yesterday to say, Jennifer, how's it going? He's kept his finger on the Oshawa pulse, and I'm very proud to be a part of that, down the road legacy and to stay connected with those roots. So. Okay.
And on that, we are out of time. Jennifer French, once again, congratulations. Jennifer French is the NDP MPP elect for Oshawa. On behalf of all of us here at Rogers TV, thanks for joining us. Until next time, I'm Debra Hutchison.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Treaty in Cree is Nascomitoin, an oral agreement. And our agreements were always spoken. For George Spence, the core of treaty was Wichihioin, to help one another.
And so we, the commissioners...
He was there for the making of Treaty 9, where the Cree were told...
We will honor this agreement together, for as long as the sun shines and the waters flow.
The Cree made their mark because they were assured that the land would be shared, and they would always be able to harvest what they needed. George Spence was my great-grandfather. In his life, he saw many promises of the treaty go unfulfilled.
Treaties were essential to the creation of Canada. First Nations still fight for the agreements to be honored.
To paddle a kayak effectively, you need to use your